Support for this podcast and the following message comes from Marvel Television and Disney+. From the twisted minds behind WandaVision comes an all-new Marvel original series, Agatha All Along. This Halloween season, revenge is a witch. You don't want to miss Agatha Harkness's return to darkness as she assembles a coven to regain her power and wreak vengeance. Starring Kathryn Hahn and Aubrey Plaza, Marvel Television's Agatha All Along. 2-episode premiere streaming September 18th, only on Disney+.
Are you ready to move your career forward? Make your comeback with Purdue Global and get college credit for your work, school, life, or military experiences. With these credits, you may have already completed up to 75% of your undergraduate degree. You've worked hard to get where you are. It's time to get the recognition you deserve and earn a degree you'll be proud of. One that employers will trust and respect. When you take the next step in your life and career, make it count with Purdue Global, Purdue's online university for working adults. Start your comeback at purdueglobal.edu.
In California, during the summer of 1975, within the span of 17 days and less than 90 miles, 2 women did something no other woman had done before: tried to assassinate the President of the United States. One was the protege of Charles Manson.
26-year-old Lynette Fromm, nicknamed Squeaky.
The other, a middle-aged housewife working undercover for the FBI.
Identified by police as Sarah Jean Moore, in her 40s.
The story of one strange and violent summer. This season on the new podcast, Rip Current.
Listen to Rip Current on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.
What happens when a professional football player's career ends and the applause fades and the screaming fans move on?
I am going to share my journey of how I went from Christianity to now a Hebrew Israelite.
For some former NFL players, a new faith provides answers.
You mix homesteading with guns and church, voila, you got Straightway.
He tried to save everybody.
Listen to Spiraled on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey listeners, it's Jenny. This month we're heading back to school and we're taking you along with us. For all of September, we're bringing back some of our favorite Womanica episodes you might have missed. You'll hear me and some talented guest hosts share both iconic and underappreciated stories. And there's a twist. Each week is dedicated to a different school subject. This week, women you should be learning about in math class. These Womanican stories show us just how exciting and diverse math really can be. So, here's one of our favorite Womanicans. Hello. From Wonder Media Network, I'm Jenny Kaplan, and this is Womanica. This month, we're talking about women of sound. These women dominated the airwaves, innovating, documenting, and creating the audio landscape we live in today. In 1808, the German physicist Ernst Chladni stood in front of Napoleon Bonaparte at the Academy of Science in Paris. Chladni poured a fine layer of sand over a plate and then ran a bow along its edge. The plate emitted a tone. In response to the sound, the sand began to jump and move, forming intricate geometric patterns. Amazed, Napoleon proposed a prize to any mathematician who could make sense of this phenomenon. Today we're talking about the woman who won that prize, Sophie Germain. Sophie was born in 1776 in Paris, France, to a wealthy family. From a young age, Sophie loved to read books in her father's library. One day, she came across the story of Archimedes, the famous Greek mathematician known for his analysis of the lever and pulley. As the story went, Archimedes had been so engrossed in his mathematical study that when his town was invaded by the Roman army, he didn't notice. And he was speared to death on the spot. Sophie was struck by how deeply invested Archimedes had been in his practice. He'd been so consumed that he died. Sophie knew she had to see what the fuss was all about. So, Sophie started teaching herself the basics of mathematics. She would study late into the night by candlelight, reading books by famous theorists like Euler and Newton. At the time, it was frowned upon for women to learn subjects like math and science. They were only deemed fit for men. Sophie's parents discouraged her unladylike fascination with mathematics by confiscating all of her candles and putting out the fire at night. But Sophie wasn't easily dissuaded. She kept a secret stash of candles in her room and bundled up in a quilt to stay warm. Sometimes it got so cold that the ink froze in the inkwell. Still, Sophie persisted. In 1794, a new academy called École Polytechnique opened in Paris. It was meant to be a place of study for the most talented mathematicians and scientists in the nation, but only men were allowed to attend. Sophie circumvented this requirement by taking on the identity of a former male student, Monsieur Leblanc. Unaware that this Monsieur Leblanc was actually a young woman, the school printed extra lecture notes and course materials for him, allowing Sophie to keep up with the classes. One of Sophie's teachers, Professor Lagrange, was so impressed with this so-called Monsieur Leblanc's work that he asked to meet in person. Sophie could hide her secret no longer and revealed her true identity to the professor. Perhaps surprisingly, the professor supported her aspirations and remained a mentor and resource. Sophie took a particular interest in number theory, and there was one number theory problem vexing mathematicians at the time. In the 17th century, the French mathematician Pierre de Fermat proposed what's known as Fermat's last theorem. You're probably familiar with the Pythagorean theorem, that is, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Well, Fermat posited that if the power is any number greater than 2, then the equation is no longer valid. It was simple to show that was indeed the case. But it was incredibly hard to prove the principle behind why it didn't work. Fermat himself never provided the proof. Sophie was determined to uncover it. So, in 1804, Sophie returned to using her pseudonym and struck up a correspondence with Carl Gauss, a renowned German mathematician and authority on number theory, to discuss some of her work on the proof. Sophie's true identity was also eventually revealed to Carl. Fortunately, he too continued to encourage her work. In the end, Sophie was able to construct part of the missing proof. The problem would continue to stump mathematicians for another century. Her breakthrough helped lead to the discovery of the complete proof in the mid-1990s. Sophie then turned her attention to another prominent mathematical puzzle of the day, the Chladni figures. In response to the French Academy of Sciences contest, Sophie explored mathematical explanations as to why sound vibrations cause the intricate shifting patterns in the sand. It took Sophie 3 tries, but on her 3rd submission, the Academy agreed that her thesis, Memoir on the Vibrations of Elastic Plates, was worthy of recognition. In 1816, and under her own name to boot, Sophie Germain became the first woman to be awarded a prize by the Academy. Her pioneering work in understanding the physics of vibration, acoustics, and the elasticity of surfaces changed the course of how we understand sound. Even still, Sophie remained isolated and sidelined from academic circles. But always dogged, she managed to become the first woman on her own merit to attend lectures at the French Academy of Science. She did have some allies in her corner. Carl Gauss arranged for a German university to bestow her with an honorary degree. But before she could receive it, she died of breast cancer at the age of 55. Thanks for listening to this best of episode of Womanica. For more information, find us on Facebook and Instagram at Womanica Podcast. Special thanks to Liz Kaplan, my favorite sister and co-creator. Join us tomorrow for another one of our favorite episodes honoring the back-to-school season. Talk to you then.
In California, during the summer of 1975, within the span of 17 days and less than 90 miles, 2 women did something no other woman had done before: tried to assassinate the President of the United States. One was the protege of Charles Manson.
26-year-old Lynette Fromm, nicknamed Squeaky.
The other, a middle-aged housewife working undercover for the FBI.
Identified by police as Sarah Jean Moore, in her 40s.
The story of one strange and violent summer, this season on the new podcast, Rip Current.
Listen to Rip Current on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.
Hi, I am Lacey Lamar.
And I'm also Lacey Lamar. Just kidding, I'm Amber Ruffin.
What? Okay, everybody, we have exciting news to share. We're back with season 2 of the Amber and Lacey and Amber Show on Will Ferrell's Big Money Players Network. This season, we make new friends, deep dive into my steamy DMs, answer your listener questions, and more. The more is punch each other. Listen to the Amber and Lacey and Amber Show on Will Ferrell's Big Money Players Network on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Just listen, okay? Or Lacey gets it. Do it.
Hi, I'm David Eagleman from the podcast Inner Cosmos, which recently hit the #1 science podcast in America. I'm a neuroscientist at Stanford, and I've spent my career exploring the 3-pound universe in our heads. Join me weekly to explore the relationship between your brain and your life, because the more we know about what's running under the hood, the better we can steer our lives. Listen to Inner Cosmos with David Eagleman on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Señora Sex Ed is not your mommy's sex talk. This show is La Plática like you've never heard it before. We're breaking the stigma and silence around sex and sexuality in Latinx communities.
This podcast is an intergenerational conversation between Latinas from Gen X to Gen Z.
We're your hosts, Diosa and Mala. You might recognize us from our first show, Locatora Radio. Listen to Señora Sex Ed on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.